Ancient Oromo rituals, modern politics, and the conflict of the soul. By Abebe Negash, a truth seeker on behalf of Ethiopian Hearts for Peace and African Hearts for Peace. The Oromo people, one of the largest ethnic groups in Ethiopia, carry with them an ancient spiritual and cultural heritage that predates Christianity, Islam, and modern political systems. These traditions, rooted in animism, cosmic order, and sacrificial worship, were once the pillar of Oromo community life. To understand their present transformation, and the conflict they generate today, we must first return to their original meaning. 1. Waka and the cosmic order. At the center of the Oromo worldview is Waka, Tokicha. The one God. Waka is creator, giver of life, fertility, and justice. Unlike idols or images, Waka is worshipped through natural sites, rivers, sacred trees, and hilltops. This connection between the divine and nature structures Oromo's life. 2. Irecha, offering to the waters. Irecha today is widely known as a festival of gratitude, but in the older ages it was a directed act of worship. Families and clans brought offerings of milk, butter, honey, beer, and even animal sacrifice to rivers and lakes. The blood of a goat, cow, or sheep was sprinkled as a covenant with Waka. Only after the sacrifice did the songs and distances of thanksgiving begin. The ritual was not merely social, it was spiritual binding, securing fertility, peace, and divine favor. 3. Ayana, a spirit and destiny. Every individual, family, and place was believed to have an Ayana, a spiritual guardian or destiny force. If neglected, Ayana brought illness or misfortune. Ritual specialists, the Kalu and Kaliti, mediated between Waka and the people, offering butter, incense, and animal sacrifice to restore harmony. This concept was central. Without appeasing Ayana, one's life could unravel. 4. Fata, divine judgment. Justice was not just a human matter. Fata invoked Waka's direct intervention. Oath taking at sacred sites, drinking from ritual water, or ordeals were believed to reveal guilt or innocence. Perjury was feared because Waka himself would punish liars with sickness or death. Thus, law and religion were intertwined. 5. Chale, conflict resolution. When disputes escalated, communities resorted to Chale ritual, contests or symbolic duels, wrestling, spear throwing, or ritual oath under Waka's watch and ended conflicts. Sometimes a sacrificial animal sealed reconciliation, its blood signifying the cleansing of enmity. 6. Quarit, sacred time. Oromo society followed a lunar solar calendar, marking auspicious and taboo days. Certain days permitted weddings or planting. Others forbid war or labor. These sacred calendar integrated work, worship, and social life. 7. Guracha, the dark principle. Black, or Guracha, symbolized powerful spiritual energy. Black animals were sacrificed to avert curses or calamities. The Oromo cosmology balanced light and dark forces, requiring ritual offerings to maintain harmony. 8. Everyday rituals, coffee and mourning. Even ordinary acts like the coffee ceremony carried spiritual significance in Oromo life. The first drop of coffee were often spilled as offerings, a remnant of sacrificial practice. Traditions such as Mort, related to mourning or remembrance, or just to hurt bad people, tied to personal into the cosmic order, ensuring that the living and the dead remained in balance. Part 2. Modern transformations and political narratives. With the rise of modernity, religious and political agendas, these ancient practices were reinterpreted, reframed, or even exploited. By the 19th and 20th century, many Oromos become Christians, Orthodox, Catholic, Protestants, or Muslims. These faiths emphasize one transcendent God and often rejected animistic or sacrificial practices as pagan. Yet, remnants of the old ways survived unconsciously, spilling coffee, blessing rivers, or oraning Ayana in times of crisis. This created a conflict in the soul. A Protestant by day might still spill coffee to honor ancestors at night. A Muslim might fast faithfully but quietly attend Irecha. These dualities reflect both continuity of culture and tensions between old faith and new religion. 2. Intellectual rebranding, 1970s onward. From the 1970s, Oromo elites sought to reclaim heritage as part of national movement. They reframed Irecha as a Thanksgiving festival, less a religious sacrifice, more a cultural symbol. This allowed participation without the stigma of paganism and gave the Oromo a unifying identity marker in modern Ethiopia. Rituals were narrated as social order or seasonal gratitude rather than offering to spirits. Today, the Ethiopian government has seized on Irecha and related traditions to consolidate political control. Massive funds are allocated for the celebrations in Addis Ababa, transforming sacred rituals into state spectacles. Flags resembling Egypt's are displayed, stirring both nationalist pride and suspicion. This turns Irecha from a spiritual covenant into a political theater. Yet, the manipulation adds conflict. A devout Oromo Christian or Muslim must choose between faith and ethnic loyalty. To participate in Irecha, even unconsciously, may be seen as honoring old animistic system. To reject it risks accusations of betraying Oromo identity. This inner conflict is not merely personal, but collective. Here we see double identities. A Protestant Oromo singing hymns on Sunday may on Saturday bow at Irecha. An Orthodox believer may still whisper prayers to Ayana in sickness. These layers create a tension. Are they worshipping God, capital G, or spirits? Is their loyalty to church mosque, or heritage. And there comes persecution and resistance. Beyond the Oromo, other Ethiopians are compelled by the state to participate or contribute financially to these spectacles. A refusal risks prosecution, mass jailing, or worse. Meanwhile, Christian churches are burned, but believers rebuild and stand firm, often aligning with the resistant fighters like Fano. There is a spiritual trouble. For those caught between faith and culture, the danger is spiritual delusion. To consciously or unconsciously sacrifice to ancient powers while professing allegiance to Christ or Allah creates a wound in the soul. It splits identity and undermines spiritual integrity. This is state exploitation and social cost. Here is the economic burden. Despite Ethiopia's economic collapse, staggering debt to the IMF, and mass hunger, the government allocates billions of birr to these celebrations. A report suggests 3 billion birr was spent on the upcoming Irecha in Addis Ababa alone. Funding diverted from medicine, food, or infrastructure. There is also a forced participation. In the name of cultural enhancement, the government forces participation. Poor citizens walking around Addis Ababa are rounded up. Youths detained in warehouses with horrific conditions, suffocation, hunger, disease, insect infestation, simply because on the street there are eyes soaring and this festivity should go smooth. On the other hand, families pay bribes to free their children. Survivors testify online, exposing torture and forced conscription. Briefly, let's look at the military exploitation in this. Many detained youths are drafted into the army against their will. On the battlefield, they surrender quickly because they were coerced, not committed. This weakness, both moral and national defense. So we can see that Addis Ababa is quiet, but it's a battleground. The capital, deeply contested, is transformed during these celebrations. Oromo elites push to make it exclusively theirs, evicting others under the guise of corridor development. Celebrations are used as cultural markers of dominance, erasing pluralism and fueling resentment. So there is a larger strategy here. And there is also economic and spiritual warfare. You see, Ethiopia is facing not just cultural manipulation, but systematic economic strangulation. With IMF and World Bank involvement, debt depends, sovereignty weakens, and government priorities shift from people's need to survival through loans. Cultural spectacles become tools to mask suffering, distract the masses, and curry ethnic support. Yet, behind this spectacle, the nation bleeds. Churches are buried and burned. Families are torn apart. Youth are imprisoned and conscripted. Addis Ababa becomes a theater of both ritual and repression. As a truth seeker, I present to you truth and peace right here. I see in these events both the endurance of ancient traditions and their exploitation. Oromos who adhere to the Ayana sacrifices in the old ways are equally persecuted. The Oromo system of waka, Ayana, and sacrifices was once a coherent worldview, binding community and cosmos. Today, it is rebranded as Thanksgiving, but politicized into state propaganda. This creates a spiritual conflict for individuals who live in two worlds: Christian or Muslim in faith, Oromo in heritage. The government amplifies this tension by enforcing participation, weaponizing culture for control, while Ethiopia sinks deeper into debt and chaos. But amid persecution, faith remains unflinching. Churches rise from ashes. Believers, though jailed, tortured, or conscripted, hold fast. The Ethiopian people, Orthodox, Protestant, Muslim, Catholic, still stand together, often alongside fan fighters in pursuit of truth and freedom. The way forward is not forced celebrations or forced unity, but genuine dialogue, respect for faith, and a government that serves life over propaganda. Ethiopia must return not to the manipulation of heritage, but to truth, where peace, justice, and the dignity of soul are preserved. Again, this is Abebe Negash, a truth seeker on behalf of Ethiopian Hearts for Peace and African Hearts for Peace. In the following parts, we'll see faith and conscience and the nation burden of nation. The Christian conscience. The Christian conscience and ancient practices. For an Orthodox Christian who believes in the full canon of 81 books of the Bible, or for a devout Protestant, Catholic, or Muslim, the question of participating in Irecha or similar ceremonies is not revival. Not trivial. These rituals, however much rebranded, retain a spiritual DNA rooted in sacrifice and covenant powers outside the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In Christian teaching, both Old and New Testaments warn against participating in rituals tied to other gods, small g, or spiritual forces. The Orthodox Church, with its rich heritage and fidelity to the 81 books, has always emphasized the unity of worship and the rejection of syncretism. The Muslim faith, likewise, holds strict monotheism, Tawhid, as non-negotiable. Thus, for an Ethiopian Christian or Muslim, being compelled to attend or support ceremonies rooted in animistic practice, even unconsciously, creates a profound inner conflict. This is not about denying Oromo heritage or demobilizing culture. It is about spiritual integrity, the worship of God alone, without compromise or mixture. Ancient Oromo practices were once sincere and coherent with their own worldview. But for a Christian or Muslim to participate today is to risk crossing lines of faith. This is the inner struggle of Ethiopians today. They are living double lives. An Orthodox Christian may attend church on Sunday, confess sins, partake in Holy Communion, and then, under pressure, participating in Irecha on Saturday or whatever that they choose, or singing songs and making gestures rooted in old sacrificial worship. A Muslim may fast during Ramadan, but attend state-sponsored rituals of Irecha or Ayana. These contradictions wound the conscience, creating a silent struggle. This is government coercion. This struggle is not merely cultural but political. The government, in its drive to consolidate ethnic support, stages these rituals as national events. Funds are diverted from food, medicine, and infrastructure into spectacles presented as cultural promotion. Citizens are pressured, coerced, or financially forced to contribute. For many, a refusal risks harassment, high taxes, arrest, or persecution. There is spiritual injustice nobody talks about. A Protestant by day and a participant in ancient reities by night, and an officer in prosperity party which follows prosperity welfare is not simply a cultural hybrid but a soul in turmoil. Faith becomes diluted, consciousness fractured. Families whisper prayers in secret, asking God's forgiveness even as they comply outwardly. This is a profound injustice to their spiritual freedom. Let's look at the material. The death of a nation and the future of its children. See, IMF and World Bank loans are chains. While Ethiopia sinks deeper into debt, its leaders allocate billions of birr to war machines like drones, surveillance systems, AI tools used against its own citizens. Simultaneously, vast sums are spent on state-sponsored cultural events, inaugurations of some sort of projects designed to consolidate power. The next generation of Ethiopians will pay these debts, their future mortgaged to global financial institutions. There is also a war and culture as distraction. By promoting spectacles like Irecha and Addis Ababa, elites distract from hunger, inflation, and repression. They brand these events as cultural enhancement, but their true purpose is political theater, an attempt to control narratives, win ethnic loyalty, and mask state failures. Where is the fairness to future generations? How is it fair that Ethiopian children today, yet unborn too, must repay debts incurred not for hospitals or schools, but for drones and rituals? How is it fair that youth are imprisoned, tortured, and conscripted while their government celebrates festivals with billions of birr? This is not cultural preservation, brothers and sisters. It is exploitation. There is faith and the impossibility of syncretism. Christianity's stance is this: the Orthodox Church especially, rooted in scripture and tradition, calls believers to worship God alone. Paul's letters warn against participating in the table of demons while claiming the Lord's table. That's the 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 21. You see, syncretism, mixing worship of God with ritual of other power, is spiritually dangerous. For a Christian to pour out coffee as an offering, to bow at sacred waters, or to join in songs originally meant for waka or ayana, even unconsciously, is to compromise. The same holds true for Muslims too. Why are taught that shirk, associating others with God, is the gravest sin? we would say, leave it as it was. It would be far better, ethnically and spiritually, for the state to leave these rituals to those who consciously believe in them. Forcing or enticing Christians and Muslims into participation is not cultural respect, but spiritual coercion. Recognizing the true nature of this ritual is important. We must name these ceremonies honestly. They are not mere festivals or Ethiopian Thanksgiving. They are rebranded sacrificial systems. These truths frees people to make informed decisions about participation. That's why I'm voicing out to tell the truth. We need to think of respecting faith freedom. A just government would respect religious consciousness, allowing Orthodox, Protestant, Catholic and Muslim Ethiopians to abstain without penalty or stigma. True cultural pride does not require coercion or deception. In doing all of this, we are breaking the death cycle here. Ethiopia must break the cycle of mortgaging its children's future for war and propaganda like this. Loans from the IMF and World Bank should build schools and hospitals, not fund drones or political spectacles. Only transparency and accountability can restore trust. So the future government should adhere to this or deny these entities as a complice in all the destructions. Here is the vision we have for future generations. The future of Ethiopia depends on healing both the spiritual and economic wounds inflicted today. This means honoring genuine culture without manipulating it, respecting faith without coercing it, and building a nation whose debts are investments in life, not in control. So we call to truth. Dear brothers and sisters, all Ethiopians, Christians, Muslims, or otherwise, the struggle is real. It is not simply a cultural conflict, but a battle for the soul. Participation in rituals rooted in other systems while professing faith in God creates inner division. Death, war, and political games deepen despair. But the path forward is clear. Truth. To name things honestly. To allow freedom of consciousness. To invest in life rather than spectacle. To leave ancient rituals to those who freely choose them. And to build a state that serves all Ethiopians, not elites or creditors. Only then can Ethiopia's future generations inherit a nation not crushed by death or divided by forced rituals, but united in dignity, peace, and integrity. Since this is about truth-seeking and spiritual wrestling in Ethiopia, I think asking questions that can cut deep into consciousness will strengthen our essay here and help our audiences pause and reflect. These questions should not condemn but invite Ethiopians and Africans in general to think about their faith, their traditions, and the manipulation of both by politics and so forth. If you are an Orthodox Christian who believes in the 81 books of the Bible, can you stand before God and justify offering prayers to another spirit or ancestor while proclaiming Christ as Lord? If you are Muslim who proclaims La ilallah Allah, There is no God but Allah. How can you reconcile participating in rituals that imply reverse to other powers? If culture is turned into a political weapon, is it still culture? Or is it propaganda, wearing the clothes of tradition? When a nation spends billions of celebrations while children go hungry and hospitals are empty, is this truly thanksgiving or mockery before the poor? Can one be free in their faith when the government forces them to celebrate rituals they do not believe in? In a philosophical way, we can ask these things. What is the meaning of freedom if one cannot choose their spiritual path without fear or persecution? Does true cultural pride come from reviving the past or from using wisdom of the past to build a just future? Is it possible to preserve tradition without turning it into an idol? If a soul is divided between two masters, faith in God by day, fear of man by night, where does true peace dwell? Should future generations inherit debt and shame for rituals and wars they never chose? What does God require? More ritual feasts organized by elites? Or justice for the poor and mercy for the weak? Can a Christian, Muslim or Jew be loyal to their scripture of if they bow to traditions their holy book forbids? Is it moral for a government to manipulate faith and tradition for control, knowing it places citizens in a spiritual conflict? How can leaders expect loyalty from soldiers conscripted by force when even their hearts are unwilling? What is a greater sin in rejecting cultural rituals or betraying one's consciousness before God? You see, these are the things we need to think deeply. These reflections are not meant to condemn, but to awaken. Ethiopia's crisis is not only political or economic, brothers and sisters, it is deeply spiritual. By asking the right questions, we may open the path towards true justice and peace. Many Oromo and wider Ethiopian rituals, Irecha, Ayana, Guracha, etc., have roots in animistic or ancestral worship. However, not every practice is pagan, in a sense. In the strict sense, some elements, like Thanksgiving for harvest, may have been more communal than religious. If we label all of it as pagan, we risk alienating those who see it as cultural heritage rather than worship. It may be stronger to distinguish between spiritual practices which conflict with faith, like Christianity and Islam, and cultural expressions, songs, dance gatherings that can survive without violating faith. Yes, I am right that an Orthodox Christian, Muslim or Protestant who participates in offering to other spirits face a spiritual contradiction. But it is also important to recognize that many ordinary people may not see this conflict clearly. They are caught between community belonging and personal faith. If we frame it only as deeper spiritual trouble, it may sound condemning. A gentler approach could be many are placed in impossible situations, torn between tradition and faith, not by choice, but political manipulation, That gives compassion, but We are just keeping the truth to the people while holding elites unaccountable. We need to hold them accountable. We have drawn a sharp line here. Elites manipulate culture for political gain, which is true. But perhaps we should also note that not all Oromo elites are doing this maliciously. Some maybe sincerely believe they are reviving heritage. If we generalize too broadly, it can sound like we are attacking a whole group. We could say some political elites use culture as a weapon, but this is a state. So we chose not to say some political elites use culture as a weapon, because you might think that may strengthen the credibility of our truth-seeking voice, right? No, we need to tell you the truth. We are also correct that Ethiopia's debt crisis is being worsened by spending on war and festivals. Look around you. But it may help to frame it as part of a larger global pattern. But we chose not to. International institutions push loans that elites misuse, while ordinary people suffer. This makes it clear Ethiopia is not uniquely guilty. It is caught in a larger trap. That framing, I think, can resonate more with Africans in other countries too, who face the same problem. But we chose to tell you sliced, cut, dry truth. What we are writing really carries the fire. Righteous anger against injustice, which I view personally as powerful. But remember, I told you my role is a peacemaker and truth seeker. You see, sometimes too much emphasis on exposing sin can overshadow our compassion here at Ethiopian Hearts for Peace and African Hearts for Peace. We want to tell you a page or two that carries a line of hope, but there's no hope. Because still Ethiopians rise from ashes, and when they hear our message, if they ever do, I believe will pierce hearts more deeply. We try to have a balanced judgment with mercy, but truth has no balance. It is what it is. And we thank you very much. It is important that Ethiopia's soul at the crossroad is known. Truth, faith, and the struggle for peace is understood. Again, this is prepared by Abebe Negash, truth seeker on behalf of Ethiopian Hearts for Peace and African Hearts for Peace. You see, Ethiopia stands at a breaking point caught between history and modernity, faith and culture, survival and manipulation. What was once land known for its proud traditions and deep spirituality is now struggling under political games, economic strangulations, and spiritual confusion. Our task here is not to condemn, but to unveil the truth so that peace and reconciliation may be possible. As seekers of truth, we must look at Ethiopia's soul in its fullness, from ancient traditions to modern political exploitation, to the inner conflict of citizens forced into impossible choices. The Oromo and other Ethiopian people have long celebrated traditions like Irecha, Ayana, Fata, Chele, Kwarit, and Guracha. These were not simply festivals. They were deeply spiritual practices rooted in animism and offerings to higher power. Rituals of sacrifice, thanksgiving for harvest, and appeals to ancestral spirits defined the rhyme of life. Like many cultures worldwide, these practices sought order in a mysterious universe. They helped communities bond and offer a framework of meaning long before the spread of Christianity or Islam. Even everyday life, echoes of this tradition remained. The coffee ceremony, for example, often included acts of offering, such as spilling the first cup, a remnant of sacrificial logic. This is like a mort, practice of mort, reflected in similar animistic undertones, binding community life with a spiritual symbolism. For centuries, these rituals coexisted alongside and sometimes in tension with the great world religions. With the coming of Christianity, Islam, and later Protestant missions, Ethiopia's spiritual landscape shifted. The faith of millions rested firmly in sculpture, 81 books of the Bible for Orthodox Christians, the Quran for Muslims, yet traces of older practices survived, often unconsciously, in family rituals and seasonal feasts. Here is a modern twist I'm about to finalize: the politics and the manipulation. See, in the modern era, remember, especially since the 1970s, Oromo elites and later state actors reframed rituals like Irecha as cultural thanksgiving festivals. What had once been sacrificed to spirits became marketed as social order and heritage. This reframing allowed political elites to wield tradition as a tool for indignity, unity, and power, sometimes to annoy others and cultivate conflicts. So the motive is not purely cultural. The government's facilitation of Irecha celebrations today, complete with mass mobilization, Egypt-like flags, and enormous budgets, reveals deeper intentions. Estimates suggest billions of birr are spent not on schools, hospitals, or food for the hungry, but on grand festivals and cultural enchantment. Behind the decorations you see on the television lies political calculation to rally Oromo support, to secure power in Addis Ababa, and to distract from the truth. We thank you very much.